treat it like radio.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
I want to talk about news, don't want the drama. From no pretentious media Madonna. I found me a great ganja mama. Cannabis and coffee with Tamara.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cannabis and Coffee. It's a beautiful day in these Kootenays. Sky is blue, and I think it's going to be 30 above again today, which is kind of crazy because it was like cold last week, and I still have the heating lamps on the chicks, and I don't need the heating. They don't need any heat. It's hot, but that's what we need to get our plants growing, and hopefully everybody's gotten seeds popped about a month and a half ago or so, and you're outdoors outdoor or you're indoors flurrying inside, and we have an expert with us this morning. Ross Middleton has been an advocate and, well, a cannabis grower and patient for over 2 decades, and him and his wife Deb own BMA Hydroponics in Bellevue, Ontario, and he's my guest this morning. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Tamara. How are you doing?
Oh, always good when I'm talking to you. So it's a great day. How are things for you guys going out there?
Things are really good. Our weather's heating up too. We got a nice sunny day today, probably in the mid-20s. But we're a little dry. We need some rain, and we're not getting any anytime soon. So if you can get water to your plants, you're going to grow some really nice big plants this year. But if you can't, you might be in trouble.
Right. That is one thing. If you have to have water sources for them. I see that a few of our friends have set up little water sources around their plants and they've got going outside. And that's really the initiative to do that. So I know that you guys have all kinds of fun ideas for outdoor growing. Why don't you start giving the listeners some of your tips?
Some of my tips for growing outdoors?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first thing you can do is go to our YouTube channel. Just put BMA Hydroponics in the search bar on YouTube. And about 60 videos are going to come up, and there's indoor, there's outdoor, there's organic, there's regular, there's all kinds of good stuff on there, how to make cuttings, all those things. So that's a good place to start. But this year, what I'm doing is I'm growing organically. So this is going to be a first for me. I'm coming up with my own recipe. I don't know if anybody's ever read the book by the Rev called True Living Organics, sometimes called TLO. It's a great book. It's a good place to start from. Now, there's been a lot found out since that book was written, but it's basically a sound advice on how to grow organically. So this year, I'm trying my own recipe, like I say. So I'm going to be mixing in certain elements into the soil to get them started. I'm going to be top dressing with other organic amendments by Gaia Green. And occasionally, maybe every 2 weeks or so, be making organic tea. So I'm going to be filming all of that, and I'll be putting it up on the YouTube channel. So if you've ever wanted to grow organically and do it the right way, check that one out when it starts to come up. Because quite often people, when they grow organically, they fall back on their experiences with vegetables. And that's great. With vegetables, you put manure in the ground, composted manure, and you put worm castings, and you put all these bone meals and blood meals and all these other things that take a long, long time to break down. And that's great for vegetables because residual nutrients in a pepper or a tomato don't matter because you're eating them and you're swallowing them, and of course you're pooping them out. I keep telling people cannabis is not a vegetable. What you're doing with cannabis is you're burning it, inhaling it, and there's no exit route for that. So
right.
You best flush your plants. You want to get all those residual nutrients out of your plant. If you don't, it's probably not going to hurt you. It's not going to give you cancer or anything like that. But what it will do is it will destroy the aesthetic value of your cannabis. So if there's residual nutrients in your cannabis, it's going to burn terribly. It's going to taste bad. It's going to be harsh. It's going to give you black ash. It's going to give you all those things that you don't want in your cannabis. And here you've grown it organically. So you're thinking, hey, this is my organic cannabis. Sure, it tastes like shit, it burns like crap, and it breaks your throat, but it's organic. Well,
Right.
you know, the secret to true quality cannabis is flushing all those residual nutrients out of the plant. When you flush them out of the plant, you get a great tasting plant. The full flavor comes through. It's not harsh. The ash is white. If you ever hear anybody bragging about their white ash on their joints, it's because they flushed all those residual nutrients out. So
Right.
I highly recommend flushing. I also highly recommend organic growing, but the right way. If you don't do it the right way, you're growing organically, but you're creating a product that which is second rate.
Right, and that is very important. The flushing, right, and even too, like one thing a lot of people do when they first start, with their clones or with their seeds, is they start giving them nutrients too early, and then they wonder why their plants are starting to die, and it's because they've got too much food. So that's
This
something I always tell people: don't start feeding your plants too soon, because if you do, you're going to over nutrient them, right?
this is true. It all has to do with the size of the plant and by default the size of the root zone. So if you're in a small container with a small root zone, you certainly don't want to be feeding a full dose of food. In fact, until they have an established root zone and you pot up to at least like a 1 gallon pot or something like that, you really, like you say, you don't want to feed it at all. But once you do get it onto, say, its fourth set of leaves and you pot it up into at least a 1 gallon pot, you can start to feed it. But you want to feed it at like 1/4 of the dose you would for a full grown plant.
Right.
And then gradually scale that up. As the root zone increases, as the pot size gets larger, you can then gradually bring your nutrient dosage up to full dose.
Right. Now, do you suggest fertilizing or nutrient like every feed, or do you suggest doing a water pH balance, water in between? Like there's so much good advice out there. I know myself personally, I don't feed nutrients every feed. I find sometimes it gets them to be, locked in with a neutral lock. So I just do I do a feed and then I do a water pH balance water and then I do a feed. Is that what you suggest too, or what do you suggest?
Yes, but it's conditional. So for the more advanced growers, I yes, use it full strength and maybe feed twice and then just water once, so 2 feeds, one plain water, 2 feeds, one plain water. But for the newbies, what I do is I make it easy for them. So I make it so that they can feed every time they water. And then that way they don't have to try to remember, oh, did I feed last time or didn't I? So I cut the dose down to about a 2/3 dose, and then you can use it every time you water. So that
Right.
just simplifies it for the first time growers and stuff like that. And as they advance, if they want to try to bring it up to the full dose and go through that feed water regimen, that's fine. But in the meantime, we're getting still, even this year, even though it's what I think the third year of outdoor growing legally for 4 plants, we still have a lot of new people coming in.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I
yeah,
mean,
so
this year too, like for myself, like I've had more people asking me for clones this year than I've had in 10 years. And unfortunately, I don't have any to give away because I ended up with spider mites and had to rip everything down. And I'm starting fresh this year myself. So,
yeah.
and I was lucky enough to be able to get some clones, but I've got 2.
Yeah. So you took cuttings from someone, right?
I actually, yes, I actually went out to our reserve and got some.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one way of getting disease and bugs is to buy it off a reserve.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we got Tyndonega right here, and probably 20% of the sources of starting materials out there are really good, clean, nice plants. But I got to tell you, 80% of them, you got powdery mildew, you got some other disease, or you got some sort of bug. So whenever people start coming in midsummer and they say, oh, I've got powdery mildew so bad, the first thing I do is look at them and say, you bought a cutting on the res, didn't you? And it's like, well, how did you know? Well, that's how I know. But again, like sometimes if someone walks in with a tray of cuttings into one of the dispensaries and says, hey, you want to buy my cuttings? And they say, sure, I'll give you $5 a clone. And they say, okay, great, thank you. And they walk out and nobody, looks at them.
Yeah.
Some of them don't even have a light that they put them under because they sell in 2 days. So they just sit on the counter. But when but there are others who actually make their own cuttings. And those are the ones that I truly support and try to recommend to my customers.
These guys are actually like, it's a really small operation. they're actually growing right out there beside where their dispensary is. I know both these guys. These are beautiful clones. I wouldn't. Yeah, they're beautiful. So, and I had somebody else offer me ones that were the ones that gave me spider mites last year, and I kindly turned them down.
Yeah.
Because I just don't want to have to go through that again, because they were beautiful, and then all of a sudden I ended with bugs, and so I've done everything that I possibly can this year to stay away from that problem. So.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
I've only got 2, because as I said, again, we're still in the same power situation that we've been in for the last 6 years, so I can't put any more lights in here.
So the bugs, and of course diseases like powdery mildew are really two different things. Indoors, they're both a big problem.
Yes.
But outdoors, if you're growing outdoors and you've got spider mites or you've got thrips or you've got any kind of bug indoors, you put those outdoors, and there's natural predators out there who are constantly eating those bugs, and they will keep them in check. So
Right.
your outdoor plant, it has probably aphids and thrips and spider mites on it, but you don't know because you don't see them, because they're constantly getting predated upon. They're getting eaten by other predator insects. And they've evolved with this situation in the great outdoors where they're constantly being eaten by predators. So they learn how to reproduce prolifically so that they're making thousands and thousands and thousands of babies. And that's fine outdoors because it just feeds the predators. But when you take those plants indoors, the predators stay outdoors, but they don't care. They're still reproducing like they're getting eaten, and they're not. So now you have an infestation. You get webbing, or you get other issues. Like I just can't tell you how bad it is to get bugs indoors. And then there's the powdery mildew. And to me, powdery mildew, I call it the herpes of cannabis. The reason I call it that,
I've had that's another problem I had last year too. So you got, yeah.
So herpes is a forever disease. You get it. You've got it for life. There's no cure. You don't always have a sore, right? But you're going to get one. And you're probably going to get it right, when you're going out on that first date with that new girl, And with powdery mildew, it's probably going to happen right when you're going into flower. You know what I mean? And you're not going to see it until then. But you can't cure powdery mildew. It gets into the plant. It gets right into the flesh of the plant. And it's actually a mushroom. I don't know. A lot of people don't know that, but it is a fungi.
Yeah.
And that white powder you see, I've looked at it under an electron microscope, and it looks like a forest of mushrooms, right?
It makes sense because it's mildew, right? Mildew is a mold. Mold's a fungus.
Yes.
So that totally makes sense, right?
And fungi have mycelium, okay? That's what they grow out of. And that mycelium is put into your plant. And once that mycelium gets into the flesh of a leaf, it's in there forever, and it'll spread through the whole plant, and it won't always be there. It won't always show, but when the conditions get right, the humidity, the temperature get just right, boom, it's everywhere. Now
is that genetic? Like I've heard before that once it's in the seed, then it's passed on as well. Is that true, or is it just because of clone? Okay. So cloning would be, though, like if you're getting a cutting off a plant that isn't, say, per se showing powdery mildew, but already has it in the plant. If you get clones off that plant, then that will pass it on like that, right? Genetically.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
that's absolutely
now I understand. Okay.
Seeds do not come with bugs or disease. So if you really want to avoid all that stuff, start from seed.
Right. Well, that's one thing. That's why I was asking that, because I've heard that that's obviously not true. Then that once you've got like the Kush strain, which is, prolifically kind of like prone to powdery mildew for some reason. I was told that it could be in the genetic seed itself. So if that's not the case, then it's just come off a clone then. That makes more sense.
It is. You always catch it from someone else when the plant is in the flesh. So, let's put it this way. Whether it's hemp or it's cannabis, I don't know if a lot of people probably don't know this, but the powdery mildew that gets on cannabis is specific to cannabis. In fact, all the powdery mildews out there are specific to the plant that it is on. So powdery mildew on cucumbers only gets on cucumbers. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a powdery mildew on a cucumber and it's next to your cannabis plant, it's not going to give it to your cannabis plant.
Oh,
so
interesting.
When you've got huge fields of hemp and other people growing cannabis, there are powdery mildew spores flying in the air. They get up into the jet stream. They can go for miles and miles and miles, and they're all over the place. And eventually, one's going to land. One of those little spores is going to come down and it's going to land on one of your leaves, and it's just going to sit there and it's going to wait and wait and wait until the humidity and the temperature are just right, and then it's going to go boom, and it's going to put a little root of mycelium into your plant, and it's game over from there.
Wow. That's very interesting because, you don't really think of it like that. And like you said, I didn't know, the way you explained it, like you said, it's a spore. So it's totally different than it's a totally different conception of contagion. You know what I mean? Like it gets right in there. It's not the same as a bug at all. Now, powdery mildew, but we also, you can get into the bud rot. Now,
that's called botrytis.
Right. So what are the basic, I guess, settings for that? What do you want to avoid getting that?
Well, it's similar to powdery mildew in that it creates spores. Those spores will land on your plant, and they wait for real damp conditions. When it gets really damp, that's when you get the botrytis. Some people call it bud rot. The biggest mistake people make is trying to reach in there with their fingers and grab that gooey little piece of bud that's just mold, and they grab it with their fingers and they pull it out of there and they think, oh, good, I got that out of there. No, you didn't. What you did was you just released millions and millions and millions of spores.
No, yeah.
So now it's going to spread, right?
Yeah.
So when you got botrytis or bud rot, what you want to do is you want to take a plastic bag, a plastic grocery bag from the store. It works really well. You don't want to try to dissect that and get that little piece or that rotten part out of there. It's better to just slip a bag over top of it, hold it tight around the stem with your fingers, and then make a cut below the bag and take that whole bud off. And I know you're sacrificing a bud, but honestly, for the better good, you want to take that thing and take a walk as far away as you can get and discard that thing somewhere where it's not going to come back to haunt you. But that is the best way to deal with botrytis. Plucking that out of there simply makes it worse. Yeah.
And that, again, these are great tips for people you can all go back, also watch, like I said, Ross has got BMA Hydroponics on YouTube too. You can go back and watch videos. I'm sure all this information will be on any one of his videos, because there's a lot to growing. Like, I know a lot of people think, oh, well, it's seed in the dirt, and it is just a seed in dirt, and it is just a plant. But there are things that you have to be mindful of. You have to be mindful of disease. You have to be mindful of bugs, temperature, which is another huge thing in your room. So we'll get to that too, because what is your ideal temperature to be growing in?
Ideal temperature. So now we're getting to indoor. So indoors is another specialty of mine. I'm doing some consulting work right now for some rather large growers, and I can tell you right now that your best atmospheric conditions for indoors are between 40 and 60% humidity, and let's say between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I like to use Fahrenheit for temperatures just because it is more accurate than Celsius, because they're saying 10, 11, 12, 14 degrees in Celsius. If they made it like 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, I'd use it because it'd be more accurate. But it's just smaller increments with Fahrenheit. So I always use Fahrenheit for my temperatures, just again, because it's more accurate. So 70 to 80 degrees, 70 to 80 Fahrenheit, and between 40 to 60% humidity. If you can maintain that gradient through your whole indoor grow, you will never have any problems with powdery mildews or anything else. And even bugs, if it's too hot in your room, things like spider mites love hot, dry conditions, and they'll really, really proliferate under hot, dry conditions.
Yeah.
And powdery mildew indoors. A lot of people think, oh, it gets too humid, and I got powdery mildew because it got too humid.
No.
It's not about being too humid. It's about extremes. So if you're at 80 or 90% humidity, or if you're at 10 or 20% humidity, both of those, powdery mildew loves both of those. So it's not about it being hot or humid or anything like that. It's about extremes. It loves the extremes.
Right. And the bugs love the heat. Like I find if I keep my room about 72 degrees, about 72, 73, I don't usually have any problems with any bugs or powdery mildew either. And my humidity levels are always at about 43%. And I don't know why, but that's just where the basement seems to sit. And it's I'm not complaining at that because I don't really want it any higher than that either, right? So like I said, I don't have an ideal grow room. I'm a grower in my basement, just, trying to make, grow a couple plants. But there are some really good, decent growers out there that have learned so many things from so many of, in our community, you being one of them included. And I know that, the store, you guys have expanded into Kingston with your stores. And are doing our Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partner Society still has the clinic that runs out of the store. So you guys are busy, and that's great because, with COVID and everything, I think we were talking about this before too, that it kind of inspired people because they were home, that they had the time. And I think that's what people find too, like really cannabis growing is time consuming. 4 plants aren't so much, but if you've got more than 4 plants, if you're a patient and have anywhere between 20 and 40 plants growing, that's time consuming. So if you're not home all the time, you might not have time to be able to put your full potential into your garden. Where with, being home for the last, few months, people are starting to go back to work. But when they were home, they had that 6-month opportunity to really, put their effort into their gardens and really learn. Did you find a lot more people coming into the market then, Ross?
Oh, yeah, a lot. And you're absolutely correct. COVID has actually helped us. I don't want to benefit from suffering or anything, but yes, it has. And we actually run commercials on radio, and one of them is got to do with it. And what I say in that one is, "What are you doing with all that spare time? Cultivate while you isolate."
Right.
I got to get you the MP3s for those commercials so you guys can play them on the radio.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I've got all kinds of really good commercials. I got this one radio station here that lets me say anything I want. Who grows big buds? You do if you shop at BMA Hydroponics.
That's great. Well, because that's exactly what people should be doing. It's legal to grow 4 plants. Yes. You can grow them as big as you want in your backyard. You could have LEDs in your basement. You can have ballasts. You can have whatever. As long as you've got 4 plants, you're right under the legal regulations. You can grow them as big as you want. If you've got a 12-foot ceiling in your living room, you can have lights in your living room and light them up. And people have been. And I think that's what we always wanted to see, overgrow the government was, one of our stances, right? So this is one way that we have, come full circle, I guess, with legalization.
Yeah. And I think the government thought, we've got to let them grow. And at first they talked about trying to restrict it to a 1 meter height and all this other bullshit, right? And they finally relented on that. And they said, well, we'll give them 4 plants. What can they do with 4 plants?
Yeah.
Well, I can only grow 2 in my backyard.
Yeah, I know. I see the size.
Because the one last year yielded 3.3 pounds and the other one yielded 2.2 pounds. So from 2 plants, I got 5.5 pounds. So to me, 4 plants means 10 or 12 pounds.
That's great, though.
So if you come and see us, we'll make that happen for you. And when you grow 10 pounds in your 4 plants, the likelihood of ever having to spend money on cannabis ever again is probably not in your cards, right? So ultimately, cannabis freedom is obtained by being self-sufficient. It's like anything if you're self-sufficient, right? I personally have not actually paid actual money for cannabis. I mean, I've bartered it, I've traded it, I've done all this stuff, but I have not actually paid money for cannabis for 30 years.
No, that's the way it should be. And that's the way it should be. It should be. I've always stayed the kind of the barter. What do you got? I got. Share amongst each other, and But then. Yes. What happened? Cartels got involved.
And I have people coming in back in the fall, and they've got a harvest, and they're going, "Oh, geez, I got to trim all this weed. What am I going to do with all this weed?" And I always say to them, "Well, do you know anybody who can't grow?" "Oh, yeah, there's lots of people that can't grow." "Give them some. Just give it to them. Here's a gift for you. Make it a Christmas present or a birthday present."
And legally, you can 30 grams. You can legally gift somebody 30 grams. So
yes, you can.
Give it away, if you can. And if you've got extra, pass it on because, you never know when time you might be out, somebody might want to pass them on to you.
Right on. Spread the wealth. That's what I say. And if
Yeah.
you're medical, it's even more so. I mean, you've given up more to share, and you're not just sharing it for recreational purposes. You're helping people with their medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that we're, is dear to our heart. That was our mandate right from the get-go, is dignified
Absolutely.
access for everybody. And I wouldn't say it's all dignified, but let's face it, most people have access now. So
Yep.
we did get there with legalization for access. Like I said, it's oversaturation in some areas to the point where there's a pot store on every corner, like there is here now. And
Yes.
the affordability level, I must say, is coming down to where you can go in and get 3.5 grams for under $30. So, it might not be, top and notch, but it's not bad. And
Mhm.
like I said, that's what our mandate was. I mean, there are some aspects with overregulation still. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the greatest,
No.
but it's better than what we had. And I
God,
think that's where I'm grateful that I don't hear kids getting busted for smoking pot. You know what I mean? You don't hear
yeah,
people getting busted for smoking on the
having
street.
their, yeah, having their lives ruined because they smoked a little pot. I mean, that was just the worst kind of thing that you could think of. Being
Well, listen,
eight,
how many small possession busts have you heard about in the last 3 years? Like, I mean, we've
oh,
heard about a few grows and stuff, that and this. But I mean, in reality, how many small possession I read my newspaper, I check my RCMP. There's
yeah,
been no cannabis busts in my town since legalization.
yeah.
Not one.
Here, I'll tell you a little story about a customer. Customer comes in the store. This is last spring. He puts a bunch of stuff up on the counter, and I can see that he's going to grow his 4 plants, right? So I start talking with him. I always try to chat it up a bit with the customers, and we got talking. And sometimes I mention the clinic, and I say, well, I always say, are you medical when I'm cashing them through? Because if you are medical, we give you a discount,
Right.
right? So I said to him, "Are you medical?" And he looks back at me and he says, "Oh, I wish." Okay, I can't just leave that sitting there, right? It's like,
Right.
well, what do you mean I wish? He says, "Oh, I got job problems." And I said,
Oh.
"Job problems? Again, you can't leave that one alone. What do you mean job problems?" So he pulls out his wallet and he shows me his badge. And he says, "Undercover drug enforcement." 5 years ago, I would have shit my pants, right?
Oh my God! Yeah.
But I said, "Oh, cool." He puts his wallet back in his pocket. So I can't leave that alone. I've got to talk more, right?
God, yes.
So I said to him, so what's the deal with cannabis now? And he just goes, he says, "You know what? If we find some piled on top of a pile of meth and coke, maybe we'll throw it into the charges. But honestly, we just don't give a crap." He says, "And if you're medical, even less so. We just don't even want to hear it." He says to me, I said, "Well, so what's the job problem?" And he says, "Well, the supervisor at our station, one of the guys there, one of the other cops there, got a medical permit. So the supervisor is real down on it, and he's, so he was riding this guy's ass, and talking about, how he's smoking weed and he's doing all this shit, right? So he basically gave him a hard time. So he said, but this guy's only got 2 years till retirement. We're all waiting for him to go so that we can all go out and get our medical permits and grow all the weed we want." So there's the position from law enforcement.
I know, right? Like, they didn't care before, really. It was more paperwork, and if they could avoid the paperwork, they would have rather. I mean, plants and stuff,
Yeah.
and big cultivations and that kind of thing. And when it comes to drugs and guns, and okay,
Yeah,
but when it comes to small possession, but then there's on the other hand, but if they caught you, they didn't really have the option to. Like, I got nailed for 6 grams possession when the cop could have thrown it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And he didn't. It was all up to their discretion. It just depends on the cop you had. And I had some pretty shitty cops, right?
Well, like I say, the supervisor was a real asshole, right?
Yeah.
He was one of those old school pricks that would have charged you for 1 gram.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other guys, they're younger. They grew up with cannabis, right?
Yeah.
And they've been using it.
Yeah.
And it's nothing new to them. And when they start to see the devastation that's caused by things like fentanyl and cocaine
Right.
and all these other drugs, they don't understand why cannabis was ever a big deal to start with. So
Right.
they're the younger ones who grew up with it. They understand that this is not a problem, that the real problem lies in the harder drugs.
Yeah.
In fact, I heard that in British Columbia, there was 176 deaths just last month. And if you start looking at comparing that to how many COVID deaths there were in BC, I think those hard drugs are worse, than COVID.
We lost 5 here in Cranbrook in 1 week.
Wow.
And we have a population of 20,000 people. And on that note, unfortunately, we have to, sadly as it is, and happily as it is, we have to thank our sponsors, which are you. So we're going to take a quick 3-minute break and thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. You've been listening to us live on paceradio.net.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
The People's Alliance of Cannabis in Canada is an organization working to improve cannabis legalization in Canada. They have a mission and values that includes all Canadians, no matter where they come from. The values are including everyone, as no one should be excluded from participating, equality, diversity, advocacy, along with cannabis education and research, plus industry, safety, and professional standards. If this is an organization that has the same values as you, check them out at peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Once again, peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Check them out.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains, and when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plants, garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed, and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
CP operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CP.
Growing your own vegetables, flowers, or even medicinal plants can be a challenge without the right equipment and proper know-how. At BMA Hydroponics, not only are they your urban horticultural experts and suppliers, but their staff holds the customer's needs paramount to making a sale. Family-owned with decades of experience and knowledge, they offer free advice in person, by phone, or email. BMA Hydroponics wants to ensure you have the advice you need, which is why you'll find tips and tricks on different ways to grow, like wick, ebb and flow, drip, or aeroponic system, as well as other helpful links at bmahydroponics.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, just let them know, and they'll do everything they can to get what you're looking for. At BMA Hydroponics, each staff member also possesses a federal exemptee MMAR license, making their strong suit empathy, experience, and dedication to their customers. Because when you know how to grow, you'll have results that make you proud. BMA Hydroponics in Belleville, Ontario. Visit bmahydroponics.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
All right, and we're back with Ross talking a little bit about opioid addiction over the break and how it's affecting our communities so deeply. And we were saying, 176 in British Columbia. And Ross, you were saying you have a nephew that's working for you that's overcome with cannabis?
Yes, he did have an addiction earlier in his teens. He's now in his 20s, and he strictly uses cannabis and cannabis only now, and is a big proponent of it as a harm reduction method. And of course, with the clinic and with our nurse practitioners that work with us, we all understand about what harm reduction is. And to get someone who's on, I don't know, heroin or some fentanyl or whatever, and getting them onto methadone is really just a Band-Aid solution, because methadone is just another opiate, and you're still addicted to it. So ideally, you want to get people off of those addictive drugs. And cannabis is an excellent harm reduction alternative to addiction. So just for that alone, I would say probably 20%, 2 out of 10 people who go through our clinic are on hard drugs and are in a program or on their own trying to get off of these hard drugs and using cannabis as a harm reduction alternative.
Absolutely. Well, we see what's going on in Vancouver. We see what's going on in Halifax too with the cannabis substitution programs that are running. And I do believe that cannabis can be used for harm reduction in huge ways. And we have all these, resources and agencies too, but you just have to wonder, like we were talking about, like why the drugs are so bad and they're toxic and they're killing people. They're not even drugs; it's poison. And borders are closed, and what is clean would be coming across the borders, and they're busting that. And I understand that we want to cut. We don't want our children accessing meth, and we don't want our kids accessing any of these bad drugs. We'd hope to God that they don't ever use them. But we have to face reality that there's always going to be trauma, mental illness, and somebody that's going to want drugs, no matter what. It's never going to be a problem solution solved where there's going to be no drugs available on the streets. That's a pipe dream. That's just not going to happen.
The pandemic is amplifying the problem because it's creating a lot of mental health issues. So people are, and getting to see a doctor nowadays is harder than ever. So quite often people are self-medicating, and they're self-medicating with the wrong things, and then they become addicted to it, and here we go round and around. And that's why I think partly why the death rate is so high in British Columbia and in other provinces with addictive drugs is because of the pandemic.
Well, the pandemic here, to be fair, we've never been locked down. We've had our restaurants are now seated again. Our schools were never shut in British Columbia. Like the first part of the pandemic, they were. But from September on, our schools have all been open. Our kids have all been in school. People have been working from home. Our grocery stores, everything. Like, I don't know what we've done different comparably to the rest of the country, but we've never, quite personally, I've never felt like we were in a lockdown. Like, I could go to the grocery store. I had to wear a mask. I didn't feel I was being oppressed. It was a mask. I have to wear shoes and a shirt to walk into a grocery store too. So the mask wasn't really a big deal for me. I'd go in, grab my essentials. I didn't have to run for toilet paper, or, there was no toilet paper shortage. So I guess it depends on where you were in the country. I know Ontario, you guys had stores locked down. Things were a lot different in Ontario. Manitoba as well. Quebec had a curfew. But for us in British Columbia, like I said, I don't know what we've done right or wrong, but maybe it's because I'm out rural. We've never had more than about 15 cases in total in the whole town at a time. So should we say we've been lucky? Yeah, we were lucky. It did it skip over us? No, it didn't. Fernie had quite an outbreak. We've had, the area, but like I said, we were never, our restaurants have either been on the patio or it's never been shut down complete. Like nothing, except for the first part of March when COVID first started, at least in my area. So I can't say it's been, I don't know. I've got a big backyard. We've got beautiful lakes and lots of space. So people have been going and doing. So
it's been kind of the same for us too, where we are in Belleville in Eastern Ontario. The case load has been really low here, and we've been doing really well. Unfortunately, we're only an hour and a half away from the GTA, the GTA has got an enormous problem. So if they don't lock us down, what happens is all the people who are locked down in the GTA go,
come to you.
Hey, they're not locked down out there. Let's go drive out there, right? And then they bring it all with them out here. So they have to lock us down too because they don't want people bringing the COVID out to here where we have low case counts, but it's kind of unfair to us because we're doing everything right.
Yeah.
We're watching out for it. We're making sure it's not spreading. Here at BMA Hydroponics, we've been lucky enough to be deemed as an essential service. Number one, because we do run a clinic, so we're under the health category, we're essential. And as a agricultural supply chain, we're also an essential service because crop failure for a medical cannabis patient is not an option. So we've been lucky enough to stay open during the lockdown with reduced numbers of people. There's a formula we had to use. We're allowed 6 people in the store at a time and stuff like that. But we're one of the lucky businesses that has been able to do that. There are so many other businesses that haven't been able to do that. And I feel guilty, honestly. I feel guilty for being open and for being busy and being successful and doing well while others suffer. And some people go under, and it's just, it's a dichotomy that kind of sits with me all the time, and I'm fighting that.
Well, yeah, but you have to think of all the years that people when cannabis was illegal, and you guys sat and struggled and suffered through because people would have to sneak over to your store under the beat of darkness. Oh my God, I'm going to go get some Rockwell. You know what I mean? Even as patients, we felt that way. Oh, I need nutrients, what I need to get them, but I don't want nobody seeing me get them. Even though you had paperwork to get, to grow them, you just felt like you were having to sneak under the facade of some, So, to be fair, Rush, you guys did. You guys struggled through all those years of illegal cannabis. We did. And didn't do well, and you weren't very, and things weren't going so good. So good for you guys, and congratulations to you and Deb, because you guys deserve it. Like I said, you're we're all in this Cannabis Partners Society. You guys do all the work. I just sit back and look good.
That is absolutely true.
That's all. I have nothing to do. What am I supposed to be? You guys do all the work out there. I'm too far away. But boy, I wish I was out there because I would rather be doing than sitting. That's for sure. But I'm so glad you guys are successful and helping so many patients. And that's and like I said, helping us too. You're a sponsor for our network. You guys do your own YouTube, which helps more people, which gets more information out to patients. And then the Cannabis Clinic, which is helping hundreds of people. And that's where we want to be. Now, can we touch a little bit on the consultation? Is it over? Is it that 75-day consultation closed now?
Yeah, it is. It closed, I believe, on May 7th, and they're going to come out with a what we heard document. I've seen these before, and usually what they hear is what they selectively decide to listen to.
Right.
So I did put in a consultation on behalf of the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, of which you are the president, and I made it clear to them that they're the ones who created the problem. The problem that they are addressing is with multiple large medical permits being ganged up on single properties in order to create grow huge amounts of cannabis, which is then diverted to the black market. So that's basically what the whole consultation was about.
Right.
So one of the things that I said to them was, you made this problem.
Yes.
Health Canada. It is your problem. When we put in our consultation document, if you recall, we assumed there would be a limit on how much that could be prescribed.
Right.
Right. It just made sense that, at some, you're going to draw the line somewhere. It can't be so restrictive that people can't grow what they need, but somewhere there had to be a limit, right?
Right. Absolutely.
No, there's no limit.
Yeah.
There is no limit. If you go to their ACMPR plant calculator, just Google that, go to the calculator and put in 3,000 grams a day, and it'll give you a plant count, right? So they created this problem by not putting a reasonable limit in. They have approved so many 90 to 120 gram a day licenses that they knew were being ganged up 4 per property by nefarious people. And they went ahead and approved those and then are surprised when it all gets diverted to the black market for some reason.
So 3,000 grams a day authorization, and this is their calculator. Indoor plants is 14,600 plants.
I'm not saying, yes, exactly. So you can put that number in. I'm not saying they've approved.
No. I'm not saying they would have approved that either. But I just did that just like you. Yes. I just did it. 14,000 plants. First of all, who's got fucking time for 14,000 plants?
You wouldn't believe how many. But
oh,
here's
Jesus.
the thing. the point I was trying to make with them was, you did this. You approved these huge permits. You know they were going on these properties, and now you're going to give some knee-jerk reaction, and it better not affect the real medical cannabis growers who need it for their ailment. Because if you start restricting those people because of what the bad people do, then you have some role to play in this. You created this situation, and don't you dare knee-jerk us into some sort of oblivion.
Yeah. Well, and that's
that was
true.
basically the gist of what I said.
Yeah. Well, and that's true, because they have, like, you know, like if they're not questioning, and they never have, and regulation, they go out and they, even with inspections, do they inspect?
Well, there were no inspections, and that was part of the problem. I think they had 5 inspectors for the whole country for the first couple of years.
Right.
I did hear that one of the things that's going to come out of this is they probably are going to hire an army of 120 inspectors who are going to go out and
but are they going to inspect medical patients, or are they going to inspect licensed producers? Because they're not even doing that.
Well, they do inspect licensed producers, but it's all on the the low down, we'll look the other way if you fix this and that kind of stuff. And when it comes to personal production, I think that these inspectors are not going to be going to people who are growing 10 grams a day or 5 grams a day or reasonable amount. That's not what they're going out for.
No, they want the ones that are doing like 50 plus a day.
Yeah, 50 plus a day, where they've got 4 permits on a property. And that's, I think, what they're hiring these people for. And they probably should. Because I don't want to see a program that we fought so fucking hard to get be destroyed by people who want to abuse the program. It bothers me.
I agree. Like, that shuts down all these people that just want 10 or 20 grams a day. Or just need 10 or 20 grams a day, or even 30 grams a day. I'm not disputing if you're doing extractions, 30 grams a day. But if they put a cap on that, and they only allow us to have 10 grams a day, that fucks everybody that's got a 20 and 30 gram licensing already.
Right.
And 10 grams is, I don't think they will. I mean, I'm not.
I don't think they will. I think that I actually recommended that they maybe say 30 grams a day for anybody who's authorized, and maybe a special exemption to go up to 50. Kind of thing,
because if people have MS or cancer, or special needs, or if they're doing edibles or juicing, they need that. Yeah, like there are exceptions to these rules. Like, I would never need that much because I don't juice, because of my colitis. I can't juice, right? So I mean, my maximum would be the 20 grams. I've got 14 now. But 20 grams would probably be more than I need for and I don't have the room for it anyways. So if people were just mindful of what they actually needed. We know that the people that are patients that we work with are being mindful and not being over exuberant. Like, that's right. We've got, they're vetted and we take care in doing that. But I mean, some people don't.
Yep.
And
no,
they don't care.
And at our clinic, I do not put anybody through over 50. And if they're doing 50, then they need to have a good reason why they're doing it. But I'm not taking part in this 90 gram a day stuff. I'm sorry. No. I don't go for that. I don't think anybody needs 90 grams a day.
I don't know where you'd put it.
I don't know either. Put that one into the plant calculator and ask yourself, you're going to cook this. And then you put those on a property, it's like thousands and thousands of plants.
Yeah, I know.
And when you're talking 2 pounds per plant, and then, forget that. I mean, if we just look at the First Nations and what's going on, for example, in Tyendinaga, they grow cannabis out there. We've grown more cannabis in southeastern Ontario. We are now the golden triangle of cannabis in Canada. Okay, nice. Like southeastern Ontario grows more cannabis than any other region, including southern BC, than anyone. Okay, and it has got to the point now where it's such a glut on the market. The wholesale price for outdoor cannabis right now is $300 a pound.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you want a pound of outdoor cannabis and you don't have a permit and you're going to buy it off of somebody wherever on the res or whatever. That's all they'll pay you for it. If you walk out there with 4 pounds of outdoor cannabis and say, hey, you want to buy my cannabis? They'll say, sure, I'll give you $300 a pound.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, that's supply and demand, right? When the market's flooded, it doesn't matter. Prices come down.
It is flooded.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, and it is really, really flooded here, and it's everywhere, and it's hard to sell. And the only people that have been affected by this are, as far as black market goes, and they're talking about, if you want to talk about black market, the only black market, so-called, I do that in air quotes, are the mom and poppers, who just have a little extra and they sell a few ounces on the side or whatever.
Yeah.
And have been doing that for a long time to kind of help pay their expenses for the stuff they grow.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who've been mostly affected.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because they're the ones who are really the most honest and they're not bad people. They're just ordinary people, and they just, they're not rich and they need a little money and they help their friends, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard because you start having to try to draw lines, where you say anything on that side of the line is bad and anything on this side of the line is good. But sometimes that line is blurry and it gets really hard. You can't be judgmental. I support First Nations rights to grow all the cannabis they want and to use it as medicine all they want and to even have the stores and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But at the same time, it has to have some sort of standards, some sort of controls. It can't be sprayed with poisons, and it can't be, but when you have no regulations, you get the whole gambit. So you've got really good people who are doing a great job, and I'm working with some of those right now. I'm designing a 6,300 square foot First Nations grow facility that is going to be the standard for quality cannabis growing on First Nations. And I'm working with someone who is a very influential person in the country, not just in the region, but in the country, on First Nations projects. He's been mostly involved with things like civic centers and arenas and community centers and things like that, and on those kinds of projects with First Nations. But now he's getting into the cannabis part. So we are designing this particular facility at near Health Canada standards, and then that's going to be presented nationwide amongst band councils and other territories across the country.
Excellent.
As an example of how it should go, and hoping that the First Nations, either band by band or territory by territory or as a whole, get together and do create some kind of regulations. They don't have to be like Health Canada's silly regulations, but some kind of regulations that will ensure that things are done right and done safely.
Well, just a production plant. Like, they don't have to be ran any different than, say, a food production plant, really. Same basic safety standards, cleanliness, sanitation, and the knowledge of the plant. Like, they don't have to be, I don't know, I worked at a French fry plant. We didn't have to be security and all this other bullshit that they want. And it fits on, and I truly believe the First Nations should have gotten first kick at this can, honestly.
Yes. And there's already a good model that we can use to go by, and that's tobacco.
Right.
First Nations are allowed to grow, process, and sell their own tobacco as they see fit. But there are regulations that they have to go by as well. And they have to have inspections and things like that. So that's good. I mean, tobacco obviously is comparing it to cannabis is no comparison because it's much, much worse for you.
Right.
But it's even worse for you if it's got pesticides on it or it's been grown with some sort of PGR or something, there just has to be some basic standard that's going to ensure the health and welfare of the consumers. That's all.
Right. I agree. And that's, as long as that's all encompassed within the plant, pretty much, then they're going to be able to take that standard higher. Like, because you're right, they do produce tobacco. Like, not so much here on our reservation, I don't think, but in Ontario, I know I've seen bags of smokes and stuff from Ontario.
It's big here.
Yeah.
In fact, it was the big business on the territory until cannabis came along, and it's now only second to cannabis. It's still a big industry. They still sell a lot of cigarettes, but now they sell more cannabis than they do cigarettes, and maybe that's a good thing.
Absolutely, it's a good thing. Less cancer, right?
yeah, for sure. In fact, you could look at it as being possibly preventing cancer. Who knows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we know that cannabis is medicine for so many people. Like, the numbers were at 420,000, licensed medical cannabis patients in Canada the last time I checked on the stats on that. And there were so many that were, 40,000 licensed producer and the rest were outgrowing. And that's a large percentage of people that are actually growing their own medicine finally. And those are the numbers that we started back when I was, 2011 was 10,000 in total. And that wasn't all growing. That was just 10,000 cannabis patients. Now there's 420,000 of us. And that's growing daily. So that's phenomenal that many people are turning to cannabis rather than turning to pills, right?
Yep. Yeah. One more thing I'm just going to touch on briefly, and I can only do it briefly by law.
Okay.
And that is that the battle continues.
Yeah.
Court battles continue.
Yeah, I know.
Medical cannabis access is not over. I am allowed only to tell you that there is a case in action right now. It has to do with a medical cannabis dispensary owner who was arrested, charged and convicted, and then it was appealed to the Superior Court and is now with the Superior Court. For some reason, Superior Court judge decided that they were going to put a publication ban on any of the details. So that's why, by law, I can't say any more than what I've already said. I don't think I've said anything more than what's common knowledge. But if we win this one, let's just say that there could be a medical cannabis dispensary system that's federally regulated across the country. And that's all I can say about it.
Well, we'll keep that in our thoughts and prayers.
Yes. So fingers crossed. We're hoping for the best. Final arguments are in September.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a publication ban on that. There's
no, there isn't. I think you're good. But yeah, no, that's, I think a lot of us are waiting that. And then, like Sarah and Sean also had their court day in Alberta, and they won. And they were going to go ahead and appeal, but just because Sean was convicted too, right? Like, he didn't get off on the charges, and it was for cultivation, so they were going to go ahead to Supreme Court too, but they decided they can't afford to do that right at this time. So
right, and that's a part of it is the money to try to afford to defend yourself against these charges. It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
No. So I haven't discussed it with him for a while. So I don't. As far as I know, they're growing bees. They were getting bees and more chickens, and they're living off grid up north and up near Fort St. James. It's a beautiful place. We went up there last year. It's beautiful. So they're living off grid, and they're growing cannabis too, and they're patients and taking care of Maya and living life right now. So and that's something. Nice. Sometimes you just have to take a breather. They might decide to go ahead at some point. I don't know. I think they're just exhausted from all of it, to be fair. And I can't blame them.
So I mean, that's got to be hard to deal with.
Well, when you got a child too to take care of the special needs too, it's just exhausting on all levels, right? But they've done a fabulous job, and they represented our patients so well and fought so hard. And that's all we could do as patients for each other, is try and stay connected and try and fight for each other and try and support each other, and that's all we can do, and that's what we've been doing on the Pace Radio Network for the last 6 years, and we're going to continue to educate people. And I'd like to thank you for coming on my show. I appreciate it. I really appreciate having you guys out there working so hard with the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partner Society too, and assigning patients. It's just amazing the work you guys do out there, and the store. I'm so glad you're there to help other medical patients learn how to grow, because I couldn't be asking to grow from the best too. And your YouTube channel as well as BMA Hydroponics, right?
Yep, check it out.
Yeah, absolutely, check it out. Anybody you want to shout out to before we have to turn us off?
Oh, geez. Yes, I'm going to shout out two people like Sarah and Cheryl Rose and people like that who it's personal for them. This is about their children. This is about their families, and there's a shout out to them. I admire their strength. I admire their determination, and I fully support everything they do.
Speaking of Cheryl and Haley, my GoFundMe is up and running for Haley's Get a Ride. We know it's a lot of money to be asking for them. They have found a place to live. It is farther away from VGH. It's a nicer place, but it's farther away. So if anybody has any little extra money, you can go find that GoFundMe on my page, Cheryl's page, Haley's page, Cannabis and Coffee, Pace Radio. Or you can email me or Cheryl directly. We can't take email transfers at this time because of Cheryl's disability. That's why we're doing it this GoFundMe, with me being the one taking the money to get to them, because they can't take it because of their disability. And that's the only reason why I'm involved at all, to be fair. Because you know how much I love being involved when it comes to cash, Ross. It's like, I don't want to be involved in that shit. But
it's a noble effort, and well worth it.
Yeah, so we're trying to raise, like I said, it's a lot of money. It's $50,000, but or if we know somebody who's got a good, used Dodge van, Dodge Caravan, but it's got to be a fairly new one, or Dodge dealership. We've sent emails off to a few in my local area and have gotten no response. So we'll just keep plugging away, but we're going to try and get Haley a ride so she can be taken around and have some quality life. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, well, thank you again for coming on. We will, I'm not even sure who I've got lined up for next week. Corey Yelland, I think, actually, is who my next guest is. I'd have to look at my list. I was always telling me, write stuff down, Tamara, and I never do. But yeah, Corey Yelland's going to, I think, be on my next guest on my next show. And you've been listening to us live on paceradio.net. Y'all have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.